Hey everybody, this is Brett Ingram and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today we're talking with Barbara Turley, founder and CEO of the Virtual Hub, a leading virtual assistant company. She's grown to a 350 employee enterprise. So she's on a mission to revolutionize the way businesses operate by helping clients to optimize their operations using offshore virtual assistants, process automation, and streamline workflows. I'm a huge believer in outsourcing personally and automation, so I'm excited to have her with us today because she's going to share with us some amazing tips about getting more done in less time. So with that, welcome Barbara, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I can imagine, I'm so into, support layer assistance and automation as well, that I'm sure we can have a great back and forth about this, about how to optimize ourselves even better.
Yeah, I'm excited about it because I'll have a couple little stories to share along the way. I made a couple of big mistakes when I tried. Yeah.
Didn't we all?
Yeah. And so I think anything we can share that helps, because if I knew, then what I know now, it would have been a totally different ballgame. So I know you're going to be sharing with us some really amazing tips about how to optimize our businesses so we can scale easier, faster, and everything, and still have more free time. But I want to start out by asking you about your background. So what did you do to start your career, and what led you to focus on outsourcing and virtual assistants in particular?
Sure, it's kind of an interesting story in itself because I was corporate. I wasn't actually the entrepreneurial, startup. I didn't have 10 startups that, didn't go anywhere. I was fully in the corporate world. I was in the financial industry for a very long time and I absolutely loved it. So all through my 20s, I was an equity trader for a long time. I also was in asset management sales. But where the kind of entrepreneurial thing or the business growth thing, I suppose, kind of hit me was in the last big financial crisis in the 2008 rumble. Those of us are old enough to remember that now. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And I, after that time, got an opportunity to join a sort of a startup of sorts. There was a very clever bunch of people that I knew that were got an opportunity to take a business out of one of the investment banks in Sydney. And I joined and I decided to hop on the coattails of that. And I learned so much about how a great company gets built, and it really kind of whetted my appetite to say, wow, I'd like to do that myself one day. That was kind of the first start of that. But it did take 5 years before I actually decided to make the jump. And I think the real jump for me, honestly, then was to say I actually wanted to have children. Now, you wouldn't normally go, right, I should therefore launch a company, right? In hindsight, that's a really bad idea. but one I've kind of pulled off, mainly because I suppose, coming onto our conversation of optimizing our lives, I had to, the constraints were so intense for me because I decided to become the entrepreneurial mom and do children at the same time. So, but how I went from that to outsourcing is interesting. There was no decision in that. It wasn't like, there was no thought in it. It was completely by accident. I was a business coach, and I did notice that most of the businesses I was coaching, yes, they needed strategy and advice around certain things, but actually what they really needed was assistance in their business. They needed people to do the doing. They were doing too much themselves. Classic problem. And I had gotten a virtual assistant myself, and it rolled from there. I found myself doing it for clients. And before I knew it, I was kind of in a new business. I was like, wow, this is actually, I'm doing something totally different here and getting asked for that more. So that's the kind of very quick version of the story about how I ended up doing this and coming full circle there.
Yeah, that's really cool. So obviously then once you started getting asked by other people, hey, can you do this for me? Can you find me somebody? That's actually what spurred you to start the Virtual Hub itself?
Yes, totally. I realized what a game changer it was for certain clients I was working with. And for me, I had done it for some close friends. I had done it for clients, put virtual assistants into their businesses. Now, I had also helped them, though, with operational frameworks to make that work better. So that was what I actually found myself being a specialist coach in. And then I thought, I wonder, is there a business in this VA thing? And I mean, there was people doing it back then. But I seemed to be getting business doing it, and I was quite enjoying it. So yeah, that was kind of, I made the jump, and I wasn't doing business coaching anymore after that, and I decided to go all in and overnight I was in a new business, really. That's how. So it was very accidental, very organic. Yeah.
That's funny, and it's kind of cool because oftentimes it goes the opposite way.
Yeah.
Somebody has an idea, and then they say, "Oh, I think I'll build a business around this."
Yeah.
But so starting something is one thing.
Yeah.
But to be able to build something to a 350-person enterprise is a totally different ball game and different skill set. So how did it evolve from sort of the kindling that you had into the full-blown version of what you're doing now?
Yeah, so look, I had a lot to learn, let's be honest. And for any, people who've done the entrepreneurial journey out there, they will know that it is fraught with risks and crevices and all sorts of, gut-wrenching experiences, to be totally honest. And I had all of those. Yeah. I had all of those experiences because I had no experience recruiting or hiring people either. I actually had never really led a team. I had always done quite solo work in all of my previous jobs. So that was a wild ride, shall we say. But I think what happened, there's two things here in this that actually stood to me. Number one, I had been a trader for 8 years in an equity trading floor. And when you're doing that job, it's very fast, it's very dynamic. And what you're actually doing is matching supply and demand really quickly, right? And making decisions around that. And I felt in the early days when it was quite fly by the seat of my pants, it was very much like just matching supply and demand. There was people that wanted stuff and there was people looking for jobs, and I was able to kind of quickly figure out what both sides needed and create a match myself. So that kind of worked really in the early days. But after a while, you can't do that at scale. Like, it wasn't really scalable. I had to build systems. And the next thing that really stood to me was I discovered, again, quite by accident, that my natural skill set, I'm very good at systems and processes, and I loved automation. I think it's because I'm naturally lazy, and anytime I have to do something more than once, I'm like, I wonder, can we process this or give it to someone else? So I'm naturally good at that, and I was able to very quickly figure out that if you have the right operational framework, and you actually build out your departments and your companies, and I knew how to scale it up basically from an operational standpoint, and that was very, very useful for my journey. And I think operational frameworks is where a lot of companies actually stumble when they're trying to scale. Yeah, they don't get that right.
Yeah, I mean, doing something on an entrepreneurial level where you're just sort of, forcing your way or working your way through it, you can do on a small basis. Yeah. But as you start to try to scale it or grow it, all of the cracks, all of the issues and the problems start to reveal themselves, and they make it impossible to be able to scale if you aren't doing things efficiently and well.
It makes it expensive to scale as well, if I could just add. So, because what I've learned over the years of doing this is, the operational framework is one thing, you need systems and processes. If you get it right, though, and if you really nail that and you master that, you'll figure out pretty quickly what you can automate, what you can delegate, and then what you can actually have virtual assistants do. And you'll find that you can have them doing a lot more than you think. And I find a lot of businesses, what they're actually doing now, I see this all the time, is nobody's optimizing the human capital budget in a business. And they're actually paying people, their top people are being paid to spend anywhere from 20 to 60% of their day doing kind of, process-driven, admin style stuff that could be trainable and actually could be given to an assistant. But they don't believe that that's possible. So I always sort of think the better the machine that you build, actually the more cost effective the staff you can put in to run the thing. And I've done that over and over and over again in the virtual hub and seen it done in client businesses. So I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. In fact, I have a little story I'll share in a bit about that. But so what about outsourcing versus hiring? So what about the business owner or entrepreneur that says, you know what, I'm sort of old school here. I don't know about this whole virtual thing. I like to sit next to somebody and know, what would you say to somebody in terms of the pros and cons of hiring versus going with the VA route?
Yeah, okay. So that's, okay, let me unpack that question. So first let's talk about in-person versus remote, right? Because you can hire remote people, and not have the outsourcing thing. So I think COVID solved a lot of these issues because people were forced to go remote. But those who are very old school, who still think, I just want the person sitting beside me, I totally get that, because as entrepreneurs, we have this sense of wanting to know what's happening, right? Because we're under the pump, right? And we're like, is this person, are they going to deliver? Is this actually going to work, right? Every day we're asking ourselves the question, is this going to work? Or is this the day I'm going to collapse and die, right? That's kind of how we feel. And I know all business owners can feel that to a certain extent. And I think some people think that when the person is beside them, that they have a better sense of what's going on. But actually, really, it doesn't matter whether the person is beside you or whether they're remote. The right operational framework and the right way of working is actually how you get over that problem. So, like, I could go on for 4 hours about how you're going to achieve that, but it's about setting, objectives and key results, having projects linked to those things, making sure that outcomes and expectations are very, very clear. And sometimes we think we're being clear, but actually we're not clear enough. So, I'll park that one there. But in terms of hiring versus outsourcing, this is another bugbear of mine. I actually hate the word outsourcing, right? I know I'm in the outsourcing industry. I hate that word because outsourcing implies that you're going to take a piece of work and you're going to give it into a black hole somewhere else to be taken care of, right? And it feels, again, like a loss of control. So what I prefer to say is with a virtual assistant and with the industry that we're in, we actually, although we're an agency, we're a company that does this, we actually integrate the virtual assistants inside a client's business. And we prefer to say we're like a partner that bolts onto a business. So they're going to look and feel like an employee. They're going to look and feel like one of your team. But we're going to handle all the heavy lifting of recruiting, training, culture, team building, liaising on any sorts of issues that might come up along the way, maternity leave, whatever it is. We actually take all of that, and a lot of clients, when they want to do this support assistance or they want to get VAs in, they don't really have the time to be burning figuring all that stuff out. And really that's kind of how I see what we do anyway, and what a lot of companies like us do. You want to have this sense of always having the person inside, whether they are employed directly by you or someone else does the employer of records type stuff. Either or, you still want them integrated inside your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, when I was starting out, one of the challenges I had is I was trying to do everything myself. I had this feeling of self-reliance. I'm an entrepreneur, right? So I feel like, I can do everything, and no one could do as well as I could with the things I need to do. So I was working a lot, but no matter how much I got done and how efficient I got, I realized there was always going to be more to do. So it took me a long time, to be honest, to actually get any sort of help. Too long. And so how does an entrepreneur know when they need a VA and when they should get one?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. Of course I'm going to argue that you need one straight away, but let me unpack this for a second. So if you're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, you're starting out, you're on your own. It's just you, right? And you're figuring out, product to market fit. You're figuring out who's going to buy what, is what you're going to sell, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things to be doing. What you can do there, you still are going to be insanely busy, right? Even in those early days. And I feel like then you need a sort of a generalist VA that can fly alongside you and do all sorts of things, right? You need someone who can post on social media, who can help you research something, who can book, do calendar bookings, reply to emails, can actually be your literally like an executive assistant on steroids kind of thing. You might think that those are a unicorn that you can't find, but you actually can find great virtual assistants like that. The ones that like variety, what you want to find there is someone who likes to fly by the seat of their pants alongside you and get thrown ad hoc tasks all the time, figuring stuff out. You wouldn't put somebody in that role that actually likes to do more process-driven work, likes order, likes to come into work every day and know what's happening. It's a different personality type. So it's important, I think, in the early days to realize that help is probably needed pretty quickly. And if you go, have someone in the Philippines, you could do that really cost effectively. And I do think it is worth doing it because your time, what could you be spending your time on that would grow the company better? So that's the first step. Is a mindset shift to go, you're always going to need help. And as you get bigger then, you can start to scale out that. My opinion is that you should scale out that sort of support layer team first. So every business, even if it's only one person, has departments. Think about it, right? Yes. Even if you're a solopreneur, there's marketing, sales, there's product delivery, there's legal, there's departments. And if you break any company down, no matter how big or how small, every department has a set of tasks and processes. Some need to be done on a recurring basis, others are ad hoc, others are project led. And if you actually break a company down like that, you can very quickly start to say, wow, I could maybe do the support layer first. I could actually build out assistants in each of these departments to help me so I can be the strategist across a lot of things, until such time as the business is developed enough or I'm willing to step up and hire heads of departments in my own country or wherever you want to do that. You might be able to promote a VA to that as well. So that's my philosophy, really. That's the most cost-effective way to do it without blowing your own time up to grow a company. That's how you scale a company, basically. Yeah.
I think it's great advice. I mean, and certainly, you know, we do all handle all those functions.
Yeah,
and
you're doing
when
it anyway.
We're small, you might be able to do it, but it's obviously harder. So one of the reasons that I didn't try to hire a VA sooner, quite frankly, is, and it was probably a little ego, so it's probably bad, but I didn't know if I could find anybody who would be able to do exactly what I needed or do it to the level So what would you say to entrepreneurs out there that feel that way, that's their sort of their resistance or the friction that they've got about doing it?
Yeah, process it up, get it out of your head, train someone the way you want it done. And don't worry about being a control freak, that's okay. It's your business, it's your process. You get a great VA that wants to execute that process and you train them well. And that's how you solve that problem. So people think, if I want it done as good as I'm going to do it, it's only me who can do it. Now, there may be parts of a process that require your IP, okay? Let's be honest, you know, there could be, but people have this sort of all or nothing thinking. They're like, nobody can do this as well as me. Well, maybe it's only 10% of the process that actually requires you. Maybe the rest of it is actually easy enough to process up. So again, it's just changing the thinking and becoming more machine-like in the thinking. And figuring out which part of this is really IP driven, where it needs my expertise, and which part of it is not. And then you can always break up a process and collaborate with a VA that way. And it's okay to think that, you know, are they going to do it better than you? Probably not. So strip out the bit, you know, if you're going to get 80% of the way there, though, it's still worth delegating it.
Yeah, especially if then it
takes
allows
work.
you to
See, that's why nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to do it because it takes work. And like anyone listening to this is like, I don't want to sit down and process map this thing. I get it. It's terribly boring. But if you don't do it, I mean, I will openly share. I have a 350 person company. I'm a mum of 2 kids. I travel a lot. I work remotely, and I have done it all in exactly the way that I'm sharing. I started with one VA. I grew VAs in each department. It took a long time before I hired heads of departments, which was painful. Okay. I should have done it earlier, but like then I had the heads of the departments, and then some of the VAs got, you know, promoted up to manager level, and it took an extraordinarily long time before I hired anybody outside of the Philippines. Even now we're tight, we're small outside the Philippines. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So what are some? Give us an idea. What are some of the common tasks that we can delegate, or job functions, or whatever? And how long does it usually take for somebody to get up to speed on being able to actually start to be productive for you and do work for you?
So the broadest answer I can give you to what types of tasks can a VA do, anything that you can write the steps down for and either record yourself doing, you'd be surprised. You've got to look across every single thing you're doing and break the layer. I call it the support layer. There's like a support layer everywhere. And once you start to look, you kind of can't unsee it. In every department, in every process, there's all this support layer stuff that actually is weighing you down, is weighing people in your other key people in your business down, but it takes work to identify it. So for example, I mean, marketing is a huge area where there's so much, I mean, AI is taking over a lot now in that space, but it's still not quite there, right, to do certain things. VAs can use AI. Creating social media content calendars, scheduling social media, creating Canva images, repurposing podcasts. So this podcast is a classic example. You know, my team will know when this goes live. I won't even tell them. They'll just pick it up. They'll cut it, they'll snip it, they'll put captions on it, they'll put it on LinkedIn, across all the social media channels, and I won't be involved in that. All I've had to do is show up here. So that's a classic example, and you can do that across blog posts. You can, you know, if you're speaking at an event or you have a book, there's all sorts of things that you can repurpose into great content. And a VA can handle that for you. Now, in terms of how long does it take to train someone? Well, that depends on the strength of the process or the strength of your system. A lot of
Okay.
people want a VA to come in just knowing exactly auto-magically what you want. That's not going to happen. One of the ways I bridged that gap, though, in the early days of the Virtual Hub, I realized that that was such a massive problem that I was like, I wonder if I could sit down with all the VAs and work out what exactly they are doing for clients. And then we'll go out and process map those things and train them. So that's what we do now. We actually manufacture our own VAs. We put them all through massive training programs, and we have like dialed in process maps for things like LinkedIn, podcast repurposing, all sorts of things that you might want VAs to do. And we train on that, and we sort of try to take that heavy lifting off the client because it is so tiring to do that. But we can never do 100% because every business is different. But if you think about it, every business is different, and yet everyone's kind of doing the same stuff. So when you have the view that we have across all the VAs, you're like, everyone's doing the same thing.
There's a lot of repetition.
There's a lot of repetition here. Yeah, there's a lot of the same stuff happening, Yeah.
So it's funny that you mentioned that particular example, because I was just about to say, so one of the things that when I finally did take the leap and I started to hire, I think, a huge mistake that I made is I got almost intoxicated by the idea that, wow, I can give all this away. So I hired 2 or 3 people at the same time. And I just said, well, you know what, that's their job. They know what they're doing. So I'll just give them all this stuff and I'm good. Like, now I can just go get to work and I can do the things I really want. And as you can guess, it was an abysmal failure.
Absolute failure. I'm actually
nothing,
I have anxiety even listening to you going, yeah, that doesn't work.
Well, it's worse because at first, my first reaction was, I don't get it. I mean, did I hire bad people? I mean, like, they're supposed to be able to. And then when I reflected, I realized, it's not an accident that if I've hired 3 or 4 people and they've all failed, I'm probably doing something wrong. And then I realized, well, if I didn't invest in them, how are they supposed to know? They're 1,000 miles away or whatever. How are they supposed to know exactly what I'm expecting?
Yeah.
I can't just give them a list of tasks and say, go for it. And so I realized, like, I didn't invest in them enough to get them up to speed to figure out what they were doing. And so I guess the question that I have is, I can't imagine I'm the only one who does that. Is that what you see as the common problem that most people have when they hire their first VA?
I'll tell you what the actual problem is, though. So you've unpacked the feeling and the manifest. That's how it shows up. But the actual problem is a misalignment of expectations around the role. So you're hiring people. The problem with the word virtual assistant, and I mean, I'm on podcasts saying this all the time. The problem with the word virtual assistant is people think it means all sorts of people who can do anything virtually. But they forget that the word assistant is in there, right? So we're talking about support layer assistance. No matter what anyone tells you about VAs can do all this stuff, you've got to figure out, is this an assistant role, or is this a specialized role where I'm expecting that this person will come in with a specialized knowledge in a certain area? So are they actually a graphic designer? Or are they a VA that's a bit nifty with Canva? Totally different thing, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%.
So I think where people go wrong is they hire a VA, they love the cost effectivity of it, but their expectation, even if they don't realize it, is they thought they were getting a content writer. Or they thought they were getting, a digital marketing strategist, when actually what you're getting is an assistant level person who's very skilled, but who actually needs to be given told within reason what the expectation is, what the processes are they're going to be accountable for, if there is a process, or if they need to kind of make one up or go find one. That's, there's a lot of assumptions made. So that's the real problem, is the misalignment of expectations.
That makes sense. I mean, I know sometimes I would see a bullet point on someone's CV or resume, and I would think, oh, okay, they could do graphic design, so great. And so but you assume in your own mind that means they're an expert at it, or they're going to create graphics the way you want them created because they said they can do it. Yes. And I had this exact experience where I hired somebody who, said that they were graphic design or whatever. And when I got some of the stuff back, I thought, okay, well, I mean, this is functional, right? It checks all the boxes for what I asked for, but I can't use it. It doesn't
No
have the
creativity
level of professionalism.
yeah.
And obviously I've evolved my own abilities in figuring out how to hire the right way, and as I did, then I, okay, let me see examples of what you've done, and I can see if it aligns with what I want, and then I hire somebody, and you get people that are really good at it, but there's a learning curve with it. So one of the things, though, even early on, once I sort of decoded my own issues with it and started to figure out how to screen people, how to hire people, and everything else, I did still hire some people that, despite the fact that I was able to screen them okay, it just didn't work out. They would just disappear. They're doing a job for me, and then 4 days later, they're not responding anymore on Skype. I'm like, hello, are you still there? Or
you got ghosted.
Sometimes,
you got ghosted on the job.
Yeah, a couple times.
It happens. Yeah.
And I hired some people that just weren't a good fit, or I could tell that they were oversubscribed. They might have been doing like 6 jobs, and so they were charging us all, and it was taking them 5 times longer to get stuff done that even myself, as busy as I was, I could have knocked out a lot faster. So is that something that we can avoid by using the virtual hub, because you guys have sort of done that versus hiring our own VAs?
So first of all those problems are real. They happen to lots of people, sadly. There's loads of reasons why it happens. I think certain cultures and certain parts of the world are not as developed yet mentally as we would like them to be. And I mean no disrespect saying that. It's just you got a lot of people, right? You got a lot of people, and people think like, oh wow, there's 100 million people in the Philippines. I'm like, yes, but you're talking the top, it's very difficult to decipher who you're going to pick there. So first of all, the problems are real. Second of all, even a company like ours, like our hit rate on actually hiring someone, we will hire 1.5% of applicants. It's that difficult.
Wow.
1.5%, and that's after an excruciating journey. We have to interview like so many of them to get 5. And even that 5 or 10 that you hire per month or whatever is not, like 1 or 2 of those might not work out. So I very quickly realized this, and I got burnt in exactly the same way that you did. And I thought, this is not going to work in this business. Like if we're doing this business, we have to have an ability to be able to hand on heart say to clients, we don't have this problem. Now I was like, how are you going to fix that, right? So I turned the model on its head way back when I launched the business in the first place. And this is why we're not a recruiter. So if somebody comes to us and says, here's my brief, we're like, doesn't matter. We're not a recruiter. What we actually do is we hire month on month for ourselves. We hire for the virtual hub. We're looking for, so we know what we're looking for. We don't mind about experience because we're looking for smarts, because once we hire people and we choose people, we have our own training team, our own training platform, and we actually manufacture our own VAs, if I could put it that way.
Wow.
And very quickly, what we realized during that whole process, it takes a long time, and we put a lot of risk up front because we pay people full salaries and benefits, bring them in, the whole lot before there's any client involved. And the reason we do that is because you're actually looking for cultural fit, character, ethics. You want people to sit in front of you and see the whites of their eyes for a long time and see they're real. And like, you get amazing people, but the odd time you get one that, you go, yep, that wasn't a great character fit, but at least it happened in our time and not the client. So I'm very proud to say that these days, like, our attrition rates are super low. Like, our churn rates are very low. We don't really have people going AWOL. We've like 1 per year that, like, we're pretty proud of that. So we try and protect the client from as much of that as possible, because it does happen.
Yeah, I saw the video. I mean, obviously you're doing something right when you have all these people that are working in a company. They're rating it through the roof. They're super excited to be there. They love what they do. You know that you're doing something right and you're onto something when you have people that are working in your organization and they're thrilled to be there and excited to share their story. So I figured you kind of decoded that part.
Well, it's culture. It is culture, actually. And like, people have often asked me, they're like, yeah, but what do you mean? I'm like, it's so multi-layered. I mean, I've put a lot of time and energy. My role really is kind of culture. Yes, building the company, but you can only build it if the culture is fed from the top. And it's really important to me how every person feels, client or employee. There's 2 experiences there, the employee experience and the client experience. And you have to get both those things right in order to really dial in culture. And the only way to do that is to deeply listen and actually have people rip you to shreds half the time and tell you what's wrong, and then you do something about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's how you improve, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's actually, the next question I was going to ask. I was going to say, some people might worry that as a virtual assistant, okay, so I bring this person in, they're competently trained, they know what they're going to do, but how do I know they're going to have the same kind of commitment or connection with my company because they don't actually really work for me? So it sounds like through your vetting process, you find people that that have that right alignment. But I would just ask you, so what's your take on that? Or what would you say to an entrepreneur who feels that way or is concerned about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's an interesting one because any of the VAs that we have that work inside client accounts, because they're actually in that client's business all day long, they're not actually in ours. I mean, yes, they're employed by us and they've all, we have parties and team buildings and all sorts of fun stuff going on. But really, the day-to-day, they're actually in your business day-to-day. We're not. We're not the ones inside your business. They are. They're connecting with you. They're with your team. They're having all of your, huddles and meetings and being part of your vision, doing work for your company. And what we find is the VAs that work on our client accounts, they're actually very connected to the client account. And it's more work for us to connect them somehow to us as well. So there's it's almost the opposite problem where we have to work really hard to make them feel like actually we provide an amazing part of the value for them in their own country, where we have sort of random dinners and we do all sorts of fun gamification and fun sort of stuff. And where we see our role is, yes, HR, payroll, all of that sort of thing, but we also see our role as providing culture for the client, for that team member while you're not in the Philippines. So we have massive Christmas parties and all that kind of thing. We can arrange stuff for you guys, but it works pretty well. I mean, most of the VAs feel very connected to the clients. Some of them are devastated if the client cancels, even if a client cancels, our VAs still stay on the payroll. They go onto the bench. There's no sort of damage to their salary or anything. Nothing changes. Because we've spent so long training them that we're not, good people. We want to keep them, right? So, but yeah, even with that, they still want to stay with the client, obviously,
Yeah, no, and I think that's great. It's funny because as you're talking, there's an amazing parallel pops into my head. So in the late 90s, I was working for a tech consulting company in New York City, and their business model was very similar. We hired people full-time. We even sponsored visas, brought in people from internationally and everything else. And they were all full-time employees of our company, but they worked as consultants in the field. And so my job, I was director of professional services, so my job was to be the glue that held them to the company. Yeah. So we took them to baseball games, rented out the ESPN zone, Christmas parties, all those kinds of things for that same reason. They were on the client site, so that's what was really their sort of employer in that way. But we wanted them to all feel connected. We had, all sorts of different things that we could do to make sure that they always felt bonded to us as well, and that we cared about them because they didn't see us on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So it's a tricky thing, but that model really does work. I think it's, it was super effective. Of course, we had the .com crash, which wasn't great for our particular industry at the time, but it was a cool model, and I really loved it. It's one of the favorite things I ever did too.
Thanks for sharing that because it does actually work. But sometimes you do question yourself. You're like, is it enough? Is it But then we've had VAs that will say to us, when they've had multiple clients. Let's say they've churned through a few clients and through no fault of their own. It could and through no fault of the client. Sometimes smaller clients, some of them go out of business, things get rough, whatever. And we have always given another client and retrained them, or during the time that maybe there was no client, they still got paid. And, there's no, and you want to take the anxiety of payroll away. That's the big one. Now, there's been times we've had a lot of people sitting on the bench, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, but that's the game that we're in. That's the model that we've built. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. So let me ask you about cost. I know another sort of hurdle that people have, especially if they're an entrepreneur and they're bootstrapping their way, is the first thing that they think about is if I hire somebody, I have to pay. So that means it's a cost. I know it was a concern for me too when I had a limited budget. Do you think ultimately that VAs are an added expense, or do they actually generate more than they cost?
They won't generate more than they cost, but you will. That's another misconception. People say, so really how you need to think about this. In the very early days, I know I said get a VA straight away, get someone who can fly alongside you, but sometimes there isn't the funds for that. So if you're at a stage where you can still handle doing it all yourself and grow the business, because a lot of people forget that you have to actually grow the business as well. I mean, I know that sounds elementary, but if you can do it all and grow, then okay, you can do that for a while. But realistically, as a business grows, the main driver or the key driver people of the business need to very quickly free up their time so that they can go do more of that. Because otherwise, well, what's it all for? I mean, if you can't actually use your time to drive the company, then that's a bigger problem. And what you want to be seeing the assistants as is, how am I going to free up more of my time so that I can go grow this company? You know what I mean? So yes,
Yep.
They should create revenue for you in that sense, but sometimes people mistake, they're not the ones who are going to drive the revenue. You are. You got to free your time. So give them the stuff that's bogging your time down so that you can free your time and go drive the revenue.
That makes perfect sense. So tell us what kind of VAs do you offer? If somebody wants says, okay, I want to bring in some VAs, I want to get this thing going. What kind do you offer, and what do you do to help clients feel like they'll be successful when they hire your VAs?
Yeah. Okay. So again, very early on, I discovered that it was much easier to give people an idea. I sort of productized it, to be honest. It's, so we have three main type broad categories of VA, if I could put it that way. So we have sort of the admin category, which is very back office. I mean, lots of businesses have interesting admin functions going on in their operations. It's just process-driven type stuff. Could be spreadsheets. It's formatting documents, whatever's going on there in that sort of admin function. Now, you can add in someone there who can act sort of like a secretary, but you wouldn't put an EA into that category. So, for example, that's not really an executive assistant. That's a slightly different level. But admin is the first one. The second bucket is quite a large one. We actually call it, there's the marketing support. So anything like, social media content calendars, blog post formatting on websites, because that takes forever as well, right? The actual formatting of a blog post on there, writing it is a whole other thing. And now also within there, you would have things like LinkedIn management, podcast management. You could also have things like, you'd probably put an EA into that category because they have a different sort of skill set. Like they also need to be able to, an EA who's supporting a CEO needs to kind of be a level up from admin, so that's a different level in there. And then our third category are more systems type people. So people who might be able to do some Zapier integrations, actually, hook Asana up to things, marketing automation, CRMs like HubSpot, Entreport, this sort of thing. Now, again, remember, we're talking assistants. So they'd be building workflows and campaigns in there, but not deciding what the campaign is. You know what I mean? So, but actually tinkering with the tool, because, a lot of people get these tools like HubSpot, etc., and they end up doing nothing with it because they've no time to actually get into the tool and work the thing. So those are the broad categories of things that we do. We don't tend to do things like bookkeepers. We can, but again, if you think about bookkeeping, there's a little layer in bookkeeping that is one step up from assistant, right? There's a sort of a layer there that requires you to actually be a bookkeeper. So a VA can do a lot of what a bookkeeper might do, but there's a little piece there that requires you to be a bookkeeper. So you see that little nuance there between support layer and actual. So we would do that as a specialized role, or we could do an accountant as a specialized role, but typically they're not in that assistant sort of layer. So then we train in those disciplines. So we will train across, our training program is enormous now, and we tend to split people early in the training program into where we see their natural skill sets lying, and then we take them down certain pathways, and then we get them ready for client accounts. So that's basically the broad categories that we sell into.
Very cool. So what sets you apart? If I was going to go out and find my own VA, or I was going to use Virtual Hub, in terms of like the operational efficiency side of things, implementation side of things?
Do you mean if you wanted to get somebody to help with operational efficiency?
Yeah, or just in terms of so when I'm onboarding or whatever I'm trying to do, if I were to work with you and get an assistant through you,
yeah, how do we make it? How do we make it
Yeah.
easier, cheaper, faster, better, sort of thing, or easier? Okay,
Exactly.
so the first way we make it easier is that you're not going to sit through getting tons of resumes, interviewing tons of people, and being bogged down with constant phone calls before you actually get someone. So typically a client comes into us, we have people ready to go most of the time. And we look at your account quite deeply, like all your sales call notes, etc. And we start to pick who we think we have in our camp that we think is going to suit this particular support need. Now you might think, how do we do that? But actually, our clients on the first meetup, so we don't even call it an interview because we're like, you're actually meeting some of our people. We like to have about 3. We'll present 3 of our people, and we have literally prepped them for this call. So they know how to go in and nail this. 97% of our clients will choose on the first round. So
Wow.
I'm talking, you go from sales call, right? You'll have a quick kickoff call, then boom, meet up, and we're one and done. And the VA is ready to start. So we can do as short as 7-day onboarding, to be honest. Then we have an
Nice.
onboarding call where there's a results coach and a client success manager with you. They drive kind of the goals of what you're trying to achieve. We make sure that we're clear on that and any sort of training needs that happen thereafter. And you actually have a pod account system. So that means that the VA is working in your client account, but you also have a results coach and a client success manager, and they work as a team to make sure that we're actually delivering on your goals as a client. Because often the VA won't know that sort of thing. They're there to do the doing. We're here to make sure that we actually do the doing the right way, and that we fill training gaps or any sort of misses. Or like, let's say it just doesn't work. Let's say the VA is just a wrong fit. You don't have to worry about saying, hey, I just think it's a wrong fit. That VA actually won't lose their job. We'll just put them on a different account, and we can transition really quickly for you. So we take the heavy lifting of that. So we like to think it's just quicker,
Well, that definitely is, because I mean, I've been through that process, and it's
painful.
a headache.
It's absolutely
So
painful.
you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. You don't want to. So the whole thing.
You just tell us,
but
and
then
we
you
deal with
also
that.
you have to do your business. So at the end of the day. So can you share a success story with us? Do you have a particular client or a particular example of something where you can let us know exactly how this would look and feel for us?
Sure. I mean, on our website, we have so many we've got client case studies and success stories there. We've got so many of them now. But typically what people say, I mean, some of the one-person businesses will say things like, I went in and I hired a part-time VA, and that was the biggest mistake I made. I should have gone full-time straight away, right? Because they don't realize how useful this person is going to be and how it's going to change their life. So that's a big thing. One of our sort of most high-profile clients is a guy called Vern Harnish. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Vern Harnish,
I'm not sure.
He wrote a book called Scaling Up, and he was the founder of the Entrepreneurs Organization globally. He's a big business coach in the US. He's got 250 coaches working for him on the Scaling Up methodology. So I did the Scaling Up program many years ago, and I met him, and he came and got a VA with us, and he's one of our biggest sort of referrers. He just loves what we do. So he got an EA.
Awesome.
Actually, he got an EA. And then we have all sorts of companies. So like we have a big asset management firm that uses us. They've got a team of 8, so they cutting across all departments in all sorts of different things. And our largest client now has 22 VAs working on their account. They just keep putting more on because they just keep realizing they're very good at this support layer thing though. They're like, oh wow, yes, we can keep doing this. This is really powerful. Yeah.
That's great. And look, I mean, it's obviously a testament to what you do when you have somebody whose business and expertise is scaling, and they're using your people to do it.
He sends us people. He sends us referrals all the time. We're like,
I'm sure. Yeah,
he does. Yeah.
So where can people find you? Where would they be able to get started with Virtual Hub?
Sure. If you go to thevirtualhub.com, you can head over there. We've loads of content on our site. You can book a call with one of our team there and have a chat to them about whether this might be a fit for you. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. So I post a lot of content about what we've been talking about, some of the trials and tribulations of scaling a company myself. I'm over on LinkedIn. You can just find me, Barbara Turley, over there on LinkedIn.
And there's a hyphen between that.
There's a hyphen
LinkedIn,
there, yeah.
right?
Barbara dash Turley. Yeah, that bit's important.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so my last question that I always have to ask is, what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or entrepreneur?
Yes. My number one tip, and I deeply, deeply mean this, is you have to continuously think, what can I stop doing? What can I delegate? I mean, otherwise you just, and do that for your team as well. So as your team grows, you want to be asking, should they be still doing this? Or should my head of marketing be spending their time creating Canva images? Probably not. Don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you can only get bigger if you're able, and scale if you're able to take care of everything and have enough bandwidth to keep going. Otherwise, you're just treading water. Right.
Well,
so
I mean, the name of this podcast
can,
is optimize. Is optimize you? It's
optYOUmize,
optYOUmize, right?
Yeah.
I think if you think about, you've got to optimize the people. So if it's just you, great. But as the business grows, you're going to have more people. You want to make sure that you're constantly optimizing every person in the business, because people actually cost money, right? And they're quite, that's your capital budgets are important on what you're spending on your human capital. Make sure that you optimize that properly.
That makes total sense. So, well, thank you so much. With that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Barbara, for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Again, you can go to thevirtualhub.com to get your own virtual assistant. And I promise you'll be really happy you did. I know I was. Once I figured out the value in doing that, makes a huge, huge difference. When I started using a VA, my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. So, and you can also find Barbara on LinkedIn at Barbara-Turley, Turley. Thanks for tuning in.